Thousands of jobs in Canada's auto sector have disappeared since the implementation of the North American Free Trade Agreement. Canada was once fourth in the industry, but now has fallen to 10th. Production has moved to Mexico, taking away jobs directly and indirectly related to the industry. So today, auto workers' unions from here and the United States are meeting the Foreign Affairs Minister to talk about the stakes in this NAFTA renegotiation. CTV's Natalie Johnson is live downtown where three parties are meeting. Natalie, what's the latest?
That's right, Paul. The meeting continues at this hour. The unions have united to lobby the government to push for changes to the free trade deal that would bring auto jobs back to Canada as well as to the U.S. Unifor says that Canadian employment in the big three automakers has been cut in half since NAFTA was put in place. The food for thought at this breakfast table this morning was how the future of NAFTA could affect local auto jobs.
Today is really about our government understanding and recognizing that the problem is not between Canadian and American workers. It really is about how we wrestle some of the work back from Mexico.
The head of Unifor says 4 auto assembly plants in Canada have shut down and 8 have opened in Mexico because he says NAFTA has been a disaster.
As long as minimum wage in Mexico is 90 cents an hour and workers in an auto assembly plant are making less than $4 an hour, the jobs are going to continue to migrate there.
2 hours later, he and the head of the United Auto Workers were meeting with the Foreign Affairs Minister, making their concerns clear about the impact of free trade on the auto industry ahead of the next round of NAFTA negotiation.
But we're looking forward to having this discussion, and we're looking forward to the public debate, both in Canada and the United States, to say this has to be a deal for working men and women.
The message from the head of Unifor: if you can't fix NAFTA, scrap it.
If it's not completely overhauled, then we should walk away from it.
Calling it a once-in-a-lifetime chance to fix a broken trade deal. The next rounds of NAFTA talks will take place in Mexico City and Ottawa. Reporting live, I'm Natalie Johnson. Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Nat. We told you earlier that auto workers union presidents from here in Canada and the United States met with the Foreign Affairs Minister this morning about NAFTA. They've just emerged from that meeting and are speaking. So let's cut in and have a listen.
Look, we have a basic understanding that the problem really doesn't lie here. One of the issues we have to address candidly in the United States is the whole issue of right to work, which is, more than half of the states in the United States, it's almost impossible to unionize. Free collective bargaining doesn't exist. So Canada has a couple problems. One, we have the right to work states in the United States, but B, of course, the issue of the standard of living for Mexican workers. So we've had a whole discussion on labor issues that affect all three countries. But Dennis and I are quite candid. When we look at the industry where there's commonality between our two unions, we recognize that the problem isn't us. I mean, Canadian workers compete very well with American workers. American workers compete very well with Canadian workers. So we understand that we aren't the problem. The problem becomes the straight migration of jobs to Mexico and the fact that Mexican workers aren't benefiting as a result of getting the jobs. So we need to fix that. And we understand that it's about equality, and we're talking about a trade deal that benefits workers in all three countries. And that's the focus of our discussions today with the minister.
Yeah, so how do you fix that? What's the mechanism to fix that?
The
migration of
the migration of jobs. First of all, I think if we were able to compete on a more level playing field, there's incentives for, if I'm selling vehicles in the United States, it's cheaper to build them in the United States, just for the whole idea of logistics, right? Same thing with Canadian goods. Same thing with Mexican goods. If you look at the economy and you look at logistics issues, it's very costly to ship. But not if the wages are so small, like 90 cents an hour, I think Jerry said. You can't compete against that. So there's a mechanism that will fix itself if you raise that standard of living. And that's all we're asking for. So a fair deal.
But it's got to be enforceable.
It has to be enforceable. But, the one thing that people forget, a lot of people like to point the fingers at Mexican workers. We got U.S. and Canadian firms taking advantage of a government that allows suppression of workers, right? So these corporations